4, 3, 2.
Good evening. My name is Mace Jackson, and I'm the host of WVON Morning Show. We air every Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. Join us as we talk local politics, and we take our elected officials into what we like to call the Lion's Den, the place where we hold elected officials accountable. Ask tough questions, but most importantly, we like to ask the question, what's in it for the black people? So many times we're able to cover different stories, but are not able to get to the root of the problem, particularly from a historical perspective. So we decided to produce this one-of-a-kind social media mini-series, Poli Sci 101, What Black People Need to Know About Politics in Illinois. You see, as Chicago continues to be transformed, it's important that we as black Chicagoans remember our place in the history of this city. Not only did black man John Point, excuse me. Not only did a black man, John Point Baptiste DeSable, found the city, but black people have been an essential force in creating the current power structure that exists. So even as we continue to be bombarded with stories of blacks being pushed out of Chicago, the constant stories of black victims, it's important that we remember our history of strength, but more importantly, of black power. Not the Ungawa black power, but black business power and black political power. There was a time when black Chicago represented the hopes and dreams of black America. So how do we go from a place where black people determined our own fate to having it determined for us, from dictating the terms of politicians to having politicians dictate the terms to us? And how do we get our path back to glory? So join us for our 4-part social media mini-series, What Black People Need to Know About Politics in Illinois. Tonight's episode, the Daley Years, the dismantling of black power politics in Illinois. I hope you find this interesting, educational, and informative. But most importantly, I hope you find it enlightening. Ladies and gentlemen, What's in it for the Black People Productions presents Poli Sci 101, Episode 2, The Daley Years, the dismantling of black power politics in Chicago. Now, in our last episode, we discussed the origins of black power politics in Chicago and its relationship to the traditional Democratic machine, from Oscar DePriest to Bill Dawson to Ralph Metcalfe, and to the death of Harold Washington. When we left off, Harold Washington had died, Eugene Sawyer was selected, not elected, but selected mayor by the city council after an internal power struggle pitted Evans against Harold Washington, the Harold Washington Party, and their 4th Ward nominee, Tim Evans. They both eventually wound up losing to state's attorney Richard M. Daley, who didn't just happen to be the oldest son of the boss, Richard Daley, and that's where we'll pick up today. You see, for years it was clear to everybody that the young Rich Daley was the heir apparent to the Daley political dynasty, and it was widely assumed he would be mayor of the city of Chicago one day. But when his father died suddenly, that plan seemed all but lost, until the sudden death of another mayor 13 years later, Harold Washington, would set him on a trajectory that even he did not have thought was possible. Now, after 13 years in the political wilderness, when the young Daley found his way back to power, he set out to secure it and eventually his legacy as Chicago's longest serving mayor. But to do it, he'd have to make sure that there would never be another young Harold Washington who would be able to mobilize the black political power and the sleeping giant that was black Chicago against him. It's crucial that we understand that mindset going into the Daley administration. But first, let me set the stage. You see, when 6th Ward Alderman Eugene Sawyer emerged as the pick of the machine Democrats to replace Harold Washington, an emotional black electorate did not really realize what they had gotten. You see, Sawyer was a machine Democrat who worked with everybody, and he knew how to grease the skids. He knew how to turn out votes. Again, he was a machine Democrat. But more importantly, what he understood was how to spread the wealth and the patronage to make sure everybody got their piece. You see, remember, if you go back to our last episode, we recognized that Chicago was broken up into various different ethnic groups. But to make sure that all of those ethnic groups worked in concert, they always made sure that the jobs and the patronage the jobs, contracts, and patronage were spread around the city to make sure that everybody got a fair share, so everybody felt included. See, remember I told you in the council wars, while we thought race was the issue, it really was not. It was about money, power, and contracts and opportunities. Eugene Sawyer understood that, and that's why the machine Democrats got behind him. But you know, it was the emotions, but he knew how to get around that system and work quietly behind the scenes. But you know, black folks, we get emotional, right? And so after Harold Washington, we were all very emotional about kind of Eugene Sawyer, and Evans was easily able to marginalize Eugene Sawyer and portray him as the Uncle Tom. Now, it's funny that you think about the Uncle Tom, because when you think about, if you really know the history of Uncle Tom, it really was probably about right. Eugene Sawyer really, after a lot of people thought about it, really understood that Eugene Sawyer could have done much better for Chicago. Now, you've got to contrast that to a young, articulate, and energetic 4th Ward Alderman, Tim Evans, who led the Harold Washington coalition of blacks, whites, progressives, and Hispanics. He was handsome, a people's person, and he was easy to gravitate to. You know, he was kind of like Barack Obama-ish, right? You know, light skin, you know, make everybody feel good, happy, you know. Well, Evans took advantage of the opportunity, took advantage of the turmoil that was created after Harold Washington, and it was why he widely assumed the position of the Harold Washington. He widely assumed the position of the Harold Washington understudy. Right? So now here's what you've got. You've got Eugene Sawyer, who is portrayed as an Uncle Tom, but he's the machine's choice to lead the city. Because remember, City Council knew that after Harold Washington, there was no way that Black Chicago was going to accept a white mayor. So they had to agree on a black mayor, and the machine chose Sawyer, while the emotional black community chose Tim Evans. And even though Mayor Eugene Sawyer made more black millionaires in his short time as mayor, he was always considered the Uncle Tom. You see, what Tim Evans had done, Tim Evans not only destroyed Eugene Sawyer politically, but he destroyed him morally with the black community. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't until years later, many years later, that blacks realized the big mistake that they had made by crossing out Eugene Sawyer. You see, Eugene Sawyer, while he was a machine Democrat, he understood how the system works. Now, it's important that we understand the importance of Evans and Sawyer in Daley's ascension of power. You see, Eugene Sawyer knew how to work with the machine. So remember, Ed Burke, Verdoliak, they all supported Eugene Sawyer because they understood and they remembered that so Mayor Daley remembered that Eugene Sawyer was able to get the support of the machine, so he had to take Eugene Sawyer out. Tim Evans did that job, but remember, in the back of Mayor Daley's mind was always the concept that one day, perhaps this Tim Evans could come back and take him down. So he began putting, so when Tim Evans destroyed Sawyer politically, he did Daley's dirty work. And so all Daley needed to do was to figure out how to deal with Tim Evans. And so what he did was begin to put a new power structure in play. You see, with Sawyer out of the way, Daley knew that Tim Evans could potentially be the Black Messiah. Think about that. How many times has white America been fearful of a Black Messiah being able to unify the Black community? That always stuck in the back of Daley's head. So, when Tim Evans lost his race for 4th Ward Alderman to Tony Preckwinkle in 1991, it made Mayor Daley think twice, and he said, what can we do to make sure that this guy does not run against me? And so what the deal was is they said to, like they say to a lot of people that have been frustrated in city council that have law degrees, how would you like to be a judge? And so they made Tim Evans a judge with the promise that if he stayed loyal and stayed faithful, he would eventually not just be a judge, but they would make him the chief judge. Now, why is Tim Evans being the chief judge important? And it's a pattern that we'll see with Daley throughout any time he saw a challenge on the horizon. He gave Tim Evans his own fiefdom, his own kingdom, because as the chief judge, Tim Evans controlled the entire court system on his own, right? Tim Evans controlled the bailiffs, he controlled the courts, he controlled everybody who worked there, which gave him his own patronage army. He gave him his own level of government, and Tim Evans, by taking that deal, would never be a challenger to Mayor Daley again. And if he remained loyal, the Daleys promised to put their political influence and muscle behind Tim Evans. And Tim Evans remained in that spot until just recently, when that deal went away because Mayor Daley was no longer in power. But remember, Tim Evans did the dirty work of removing Eugene Sawyer. One of the things, a pattern that we began to see throughout the entire throughout the Daley years. They could always identify, but you know what? It's not just not the first Daley years. It's something that we've seen throughout history. They always find a black person to come take out the black person and keep their hands clean. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Tim Evans is still the chief judge, and he is safely out of the way of Mayor Daley and the Daleys, and I think that he's almost probably about ready to retire in that position. But with Tim Evans safely out of the way, Daley set in action a plan that would ultimately be the kiss of death to black political power and to black politics. Now, it's 1995 and Daley is atop the throne of political power. And his team knows that they could never really trust the machine, that same machine that his father built and relied upon, because they remember the 13 years that Daley spent in the political wilderness. And now that they were back in power, they knew they had to control the odds. So they destabilized, because remember, Daley, while he was with the Democratic Party, the party turned on him when his father died. And so he never really ever forgot that. And so he decided that instead of having to rely on those same ward committeemen, what he would do is create his own machine. So what he did was he decentralized the power in the Democratic Party and moved it to City Hall. But to complete his plan, he had to control the black vote. Because remember, as we learned, the black vote, the path to the mayor in Chicago always went through the black community. And before Daley, there were black people that controlled the black vote. But now Daley needed a new set. So what he had to do was he put a plan in place. And he had 4 components to the plan. He had to control the ballot, which meant who was on the ballot. He had to control the money. Remember, the policy kings used to fund our black political leaders, and then Harold Washington was funded by black people who made business from black people. He had to destabilize the political organizations. Remember the powerful 2nd and 3rd wards that elected the first black congressman? That was one of the largest concentrations of black votes in the country. Well, if Daley wanted to stay in power, he'd have to decentralize those. And then finally, he'd have to control the candidates, meaning he'd have to control the people who we got the opportunity to select. Now, by controlling all of these factors, Daley would be able to dismantle independent political power. Now, pardon me, I needed to take a drink. Now, y'all, I'm going to tell you, this is where it gets really interesting. You know, so many times, and I talk about this all the time, we as black folks think that we have friends in progressives. We think that the progressive movement is our friend. And so this nonpartisan election was disguised and cloaked as a good government issue. It was disguised as something that liberals thought that and progressives thought would be good for government. The nonpartisan election. But that nonpartisan election, while it sounded good, had a chilling effect on black political voting power. Now, let me tell you, this nonpartisan election was an idea that, remember during the Council Wars, right before the Council Wars, some of the members of the Verdoli Act 29 proposed nonpartisan elections. Now, what is a nonpartisan election? Traditionally, in a traditional election, there is a Democratic primary and a Republican primary. Democrats battle it out, Republicans battle it out, and then the top voting Democrat and the top voting Republican fight it out. But where's the largest base of black Democratic votes? Right here in Chicago. And so Daley always knew that if he ever had to face a black candidate that he was not in control of one-on-one, he would lose like he lost the last time when he faced Harold Washington. So they came up with this brilliant idea of the nonpartisan election. And what it meant was that there weren't 2 rounds, there was 1 round of votes. Everybody, Democrat and Republican, ran in the same vote. You did not declare whether you were a Democrat or a Republican, so you did not have the advantage of the D, and whoever got 50 votes plus 1 in the first round could walk away. Now, if that not be the case and you had to go to round 2, it would be the top 2 vote getters. Well, by passing the nonpartisan election, it diluted the black vote across all, it diluted the black vote. So imagine they would always, if there was ever a potential challenger, the black challenger would wind up facing 3 or 4 black candidates put in the race by Daley, thus essentially spreading the vote. That's something we've talked about on the morning show when we talk about this Attorney General's race. Now, I digress, but it is one of the oldest tricks in the books, which is to dilute the black vote. And by putting in the nonpartisan election, the black vote was never, ever able to be unified again, thus ensuring that Daley would never have to run one-on-one against one black candidate head up. The black political voting power in Chicago had officially been deleted. Now all Daley needed to do was dry up the money, the patronage, and then eliminate any future challengers. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll be damned if he didn't get it done. Now let's take a journey back. Remember we talked about policy? Policy was the economic engine of black Chicago. When we couldn't go to banks, when we couldn't go to get a loan, we could always go to the policy kings. Now they shaped them as gangsters and gamblers, but really they provided the financial engine to our community. And remember what happened? When the white folks found out how much money was over there, they busted it all up and they gave it to us as the Illinois Lottery. That diluted, and that took away the money and the power from Oscar DePriest and Big Bill Dawson. But then, remember, the Harold Washington story came about because black businessmen decided that they were going to put their money together and finance a young Harold Washington's campaign. So what's one of the most important factors in campaigns? Money. And so, remember in our last episode, I emphasized that Harold Washington was funded by black businessmen who made their money from black people, which meant that their best interests were to serve the interests of black people. Well, Daley had to break all that up. He couldn't have independent black money because independent black money meant there could be an independent black candidate. And God knows we can't have that, right? And so, Daley set in motion a chain of events that took Chicago from a city that had 28 black businesses on the Black Enterprise 100 to 1. What did that, from 28 to 1? What did that mean? That meant that the money that would be used to finance an independent candidate would not be able to come from the black community. Now, remember desegregation happened, and so since that happened, who owns the stores in our communities? Certainly not us. So the people that are making the money, the merchants, etc., that money is not recycling in our community, and it can't go to finance a campaign. Right? So now, but we can't not have any black people with money, because money makes the world go round. So what Daley put in plan was a program to create black millionaires, but they were his black millionaires, and they were created with his money. Now, what does that mean? That means that if I make you a millionaire, who are you obligated to? You are obligated to the person who made you the millionaire, not to the people who ain't making you a millionaire. And that, my brothers and sisters, is when the change happened. Because see, unlike DePriest, Dawson, or any other string of mayoral messengers, because remember, we've always had a history or a tradition of having black gatekeepers. But those black gatekeepers were always from the black community. And they reported up and brought stuff back down. Well, now these new black millionaires were created up here by white folks. And so while they were up here, they took their orders and delivered them down to here, which became us. And ladies and gentlemen, so you wonder, when did it happen? It happened when the money left our community. When the money left our community, then they knew they didn't have to worry about us financing another candidate to run against them. But just in case, we had to destroy the black political organizations. Now, how many of y'all remember last week we talked about Big Bill Dawson? And Big Bill Dawson became probably the most powerful black politician in, maybe even in the country. Remember I told you the story about how the original Mayor Daley, when he wanted to be the mayor, had to come to the 2nd and 3rd ward and come as Big Bill Dawson could he get black folks to support him. Well, that never went away. Always stuck in old man Daley's head. And remember, when as soon as he could get Ralph Metcalf to undercut Bill Dawson, he did it. Well, Rich Daley took this program and made it 2.0. Right? So let me tell you what he did. Remember, the seat of power for black folks was in the ward organizations. It started with the committeemen who got all the jobs, and it went to the aldermen who did the representation. Well, Daley knew that if black folks still had to report to those ward organizations, then that is where the vote would be controlled. So he decided to create new organizations that made people not have to go to the ward organizations, right? So almost immediately after he got into as the mayor, Daley stopped making people have to go to their committeemen to get the jobs and contracts. You had to go to City Hall. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that if I'm a political precinct captain or a patronage worker, and my job don't come from you, then I don't have to listen to you. I listen to the person who gave me my job. Well, where did my job come from? It came from City Hall. So now imagine you're a sitting committeeman or an alderman, and you're trying to tell your people to hit the streets to go knock on doors, or else they're going to lose their job. Because remember, that's kind of how it works, right? Patronage, you know, you go get the votes, we give you the job. Your job is to maintain the votes and then do your job. Well, imagine after your boss done told you every day you got to go outside in the cold, I want you to knock on the doors, I want you to cross. Imagine old man Daley says, you know what, you ain't got to do all that. Remember your ward committeeman, he knew you from your neighborhood, so he knew if you was a knucklehead. He knew what problem he had. So he would say, oh, you're not ready. You ready? Okay, let me help you. He knew those people. Well, guess what? Now, if you went to City Hall, you didn't have to know the people in the community. So, you know how you hear those stories about the big gangbangers getting city jobs? You know why they got jobs? Because they controlled other people, and they could bring people not to the ward organization, but to the mayor. And so by the time it was over, the ward committeeman and the alderman, really all they could do was ask somebody else to get you some city services. At that point, the defense of the black community went away politically. If you wanted to get on, you had to be with Daley. Let me tell you. So I'm going to tell y'all a little story. I remember all of us. During this era, all you wanted to do was be on the team. So the mentality of wanting to fight for black people was no longer there. At this point, all of the young political people are saying, man, how can I get on the team? Not through the ward organization, not through, how do I get on Team Daley? And let me tell you, if you was on Team Daley, it was good. You turn out, you get jobs, you get contracts, and they was hooking up the organizations. So you saw all these organizations. So imagine you've been a precinct captain. For 15 years, you've been knocking on the doors, you've been doing all the stuff you're supposed to do. And then here comes somebody else rolling up. He just got in the game a couple weeks ago. And he got the jobs, the contracts, he just got promoted over you. And you say, dang, man, I've been knocking on the doors, I've been doing my job for all these years, and you got a promotion? Let me tell you what. He say, hey man, you better get with man Daley's organization. Your alderman can't do nothing for you. And by the time it was over, Daley had flipped all of the ward organizations. So now if you were an elected official, if you were an alderman, you might wake up if you didn't follow instructions, and your precinct captains, who you spent 20 years developing, are working against you in their own communities. Ladies and gentlemen, they was damn good. They did the thing. Now, and I'm going to tell you, we're going to break into some of those. In our next session, we'll talk about some of those other groups. You've heard some of the names. HDO, Citizens for a Better West Side. The city was cut up into a bunch of small organizations that almost their whole job was to prove that the ward organizations didn't mean anything. Now let me just tell you, it was a machine. It was just a new machine. It was the Daley machine. Now, how do you bring it all together? You know, do you ever wonder, how did we go from political fighting and standing up to almost complicit? How do we go from a Verdoliac 29 who stood against the mayor, Mayor Washington, to Mayor Daley, it almost being a sin to vote against Mayor Daley? Well, let me just tell you.
Sin.
Oh no, remember it was a sin. Oh y'all, in case for those of y'all watching, we have a live studio audience.
Sin, damn.
So you gotta understand
Hashtag
that it got to a point in city council. Let me back up. There are approximately 18 aldermen in the city council, Chicago Aldermanic Black Caucus. In the time that Mayor Daley was in office, he was able to appoint 13 of those positions. 13 of 18 black aldermen were appointed. Where you think your freedom coming from? Right? So now here's what you got to think about. You got appointed by Mayor Daley. You got these groups rolling around your neighborhood that know your neighborhood as good as you or better than you, but they no longer part of your ward organization. Oh, but I forgot something, y'all. The preachers. Forgot the preachers. So the preachers, let me back up. Because you know the preachers were the front line of defense for black folks. Now you can keep on running through. Ladies and gentlemen, behind me you will continue to see the aldermen that were appointed by Mayor Daley, but I need to just make sure that I don't miss the preachers. You see, the black church has always been a base of resistance for black folks, right? It was the place that we had shelter, we could be safe, we could organize, and it was kind of sacred until Dylan Root. The original Mayor Daley understood that he needed to control the churches, so he gave every pastor who had a broadcast ministry a contract. Why? Because every Sunday morning they'll be telling us, Mayor Daley gonna bless you real good. He gonna bless you real good. Right? Because he understood that by compromising the preachers, he could undercut the power in the black community. Now let me give you, think about Martin Luther King Jr. When he came to Chicago, it was the resistance was black preachers that said, we don't need no stinking Martin Luther King here. And so what Mayor Daley did was take that program to the next level. And what did he do? He gave all the churches free water, right? No water bill. Then they came up with this innovative program about, what's it, the Safe Passage? Safe Passage. But check it out. In its original form, $40,000 per church annually. $40,000 per church annually to keep your doors open after school. Now, if you give $40,000 annually just to keep your doors open in the deacon board, and you can make the deacon board do it, do you think you about to mess up your money talking about some black stuff? No. So now here's what you got. You got a black elected official sitting in his community, and Mayor Daley has compromised every bit of resistance that you could possibly build around you. Now, take that with the fact that they turned the Mayor Daley's crew loose, and they would literally come threaten you, tell you what they was going to do to you. Now imagine you being a black alderman and 200 Hispanics show up to your office talking about they getting ready to put 200 people knocking on every day in your neighborhood until they get you out. But then they done recruited some black folks, because now if you want to be down, it's better to be it's better to be Hispanic in Chicago under Mayor Daley than it is to be a black person. So now you got Negroes joining the HDO coming to knock on the door of a black alderman telling them what they gonna do to him because a Latino told them what they was gonna do. Dag nabbit, we was done. It was done. We were done at that point. So by the fact that Mayor Daley had appointed 13 of the 18 aldermen in the Black Caucus, he obliterated the political operation that would be used to protect or defend you. Pretty much, he cut off all the finances. All the black millionaires, you call them for the money, they say what the mayor say. So now what's your choice? You go to your preacher to get some prayer, he say, hey, you on the good side with the mayor? What's your choice? So a DNA starts to be born. A DNA starts to be born in the minds of black people, which is, it is good to be on the team. It is good. So they start to reprogram us. So now we've gone from a place where white politicians who wanted to come to wanted our votes, felt like they had to come to us, to a place where we felt, where there were people going out offering us up to the mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, our political power at that point had been cut off. Mayor Daley went from putting his arms around the city to putting his hands around the throats of the black people. Think about it. By the time, in 1991, Daley was reelected with 70% of the vote. And by 1995, anybody that opposed him was getting choked out, no questions asked. And then the end thing to be was on the team. Hey y'all, I tried to be on the team. All of us tried to be on the team. If you was in politics in the late 90s, the thing to do was to be on the team. It wasn't to be black. It wasn't to stand up for issues. It was to be on Team Daley. Because guess what? You wanted the big house, you wanted the car, you wanted the job, you wanted the promotion. The place to be was Team Daley. Well, ladies and gentlemen, from 1983 to 1989, blacks in Chicago had risen to the highest levels of power in Chicago. Once thought unimaginable when we beat the machine and elected Mayor Daley. Mayor Harold Washington, our first black mayor. But in 6 short years, 6, count them. Now remember we talked about Big Bill Dawson. It took him 4 years to take over the black machine. In 6 short years, the entire foundation of the black political structure was irreparably damaged. I liken it to the story of Icarus, who flew too close to the sun. It was a dream unfulfilled. We saw the promised land. You know y'all go to church, right?
Yeah.
You remember that story about Moses? And remember, they wandered around in the desert for all that time. And they saw the promised land, but they never went there. That is what I liken what happened to black folks with Harold Washington. You see, Harold Washington was a dream unfulfilled. Everybody had big plans. We was like, man, we's free now. It's our time. I'm telling you, people was doing the tap dance. They were running around the neighborhoods. Come on, y'all know what it was like.
Yeah.
Can you imagine going from that point to where we are today? Where we believe that it is our job. We believe that it is our job to do what these white folks tell us and to advocate how they tell us. You know, ladies and gentlemen, black self-interest, we got to get back to them. That's why we're doing Poli Sci 101. Let me just break this down for you real quick. By 1995, Mayor Richard M. Daley had consolidated all the political power in Chicago and reshaped the way we did our politics. The traditional democratic machine of law was gone. It had been broken up. Well, you know, they gave us a little power sharing agreement, and we'll talk about that power sharing agreement in our next episode. But ladies and gentlemen, let me just give you a recap of what had happened in the Daley era. The black democratic voting power had been diffused with nonpartisan elections. Our black-made black millionaires had been replaced by Daley-made black millionaires who no longer were messengers to the mayor, but messengers to black people. They destroyed the patronage army and jobs and contracts that made the political organizations powerful. And just think, the mayor appointed 13 of the 18 members of the Black Caucus, Chicago Aldermanic Black Caucus, thus almost ensuring eternal complicity. Because remember, guys, the way you get appointed alderman, usually the outgoing alderman gets to pick the alderman going in, but the way it works is that alderman has to come in and kiss the ring. So to get the appointment, you have to swear allegiance, not to the United States, not to your church, but allegiance to Daley. But where does that leave us as black community? Because even as Daley ruled Chicago with an iron fist, Chicago's tradition of black power brokers wasn't dead. It had just morphed. But instead of being outsiders, blacks decided to just get along. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you've got to think about where we are now. No more ward organizations. No more black power politics. Been decimated. They took the ward organizations and they built them around they built them around geographical locations, they built them around special interest groups, but they never really built anything around the best interests of black people. That's why we're here today. You know, it's important that you remember your history, that you know that the shaping of this city all went through our community. And so as we continue, I keep talking about it, but every time we hear about these stories of black people being downtrodden, oh, we're getting run out of the city, remember our strong heritage. Remember what we did. Remember what we made. They didn't take it from us. We gave it. They didn't take nothing from us. We gave it to them. In 6 years, think about this. Harold Washington, 1983 to 1989, you couldn't get much higher in Chicago. I would tell you that even to this day, I still think Harold Washington is a bigger deal than Barack Obama to black Chicagoans. But with just a few complicit Negroes, a plan, in 6 years we had given it all back to them. You know, my old man used to tell a story about black folks, right? That's what he said. He say, son, you could take all the money in the world from all the poor black people and from all the rich white people and give it to the black people. And I tell you, in a year, the white people would be rich again and the black people would be poor. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a mindset that was built over generations. The one thing I want us to always, that even as I continue to study this process, is that even when black folks had the ability to grab the ring, they always took the second spot. They always took the second spot. They never wanted to be the man. They wanted to be the man sitting next to the man. Everybody wanted to be cool with Daley. I'm going to tell you, man. I'll never forget I got my picture with Daley. I was like, ooh! Because coming in this game, I was taught that the way to win is to be on the team. To be on the green team is the way that you climb the ladder. But why can't you climb the ladder on the black team? With all the votes, I believe in black folks. I believe in all the best that we have to offer. I believe we smarter, faster, quicker, you name it. But we have allowed the narrative to be scripted for us by people who don't have our best interests at hand. Right? So I'll tell y'all. We have to look at the institutions that are in our community. And we have to start holding them accountable. You know, I talk about business, politics. I've cleaned it up. I used to say the streets, but grassroots, education, and religion. Those are the pillars of the black community. And what we have allowed to happen, particularly during the Daley Years, right? Because when it was segregated, we kind of controlled those institutions as much as we could. But we bought into this methodology that, or this mindset that they knew better. They knew better what was for us. Because you know what? They always showed us one dude who did good, right? They show you one guy, he got the car, he got the jobs, he got everything. And so it was almost better to sell out. There was a time in the late 80s and early 90s when black folks, self-included, was like, I'm on the Daley team. Because it was always better, safer to be with the white man. And even after everything that we did, when it was time, they sided with the Latinos, and they used the Latinos to drive a wedge in between us, right? See, Daley looked around and he said, hey man, I got to work with the black folks, but who are the hungry ones? You always, you know, people always talk to me about the Black and Brown Coalition here in Chicago. And forgive me while I digress. But it is part of this story. You see, they did pit black and brown against each other. They did. Remember, we worked together during the Harold Washington era, but that's a different set of Latinos. Different set, cultural Latinos. There was also a growing aggressive group of Latinos who wanted their piece. It was comprised of a lot of different people. Let's put it that way. And part of their mission was to be turned loose on the black community to throttle us. So, instead of blacks assuming their rightful place, the white folks inserted a Latino boss over all of us. Over all of us. And got it to a point where black folks were more proud to call themselves members of the Hispanic Democratic Organization than they were to say that they were part of any other organization, black, white, Asian, Latino, or not. Chicago. Understand, we went from being kingmakers to being pawns. You think about what it had to take to be a person, to be the city that sent the first black congressman back to Congress after Reconstruction. Think about what had to be going on here for us to have that much power to sit during the 20s. When they were showing Birth of a Nation, the original one, in the White House. To have that much political strength to go from that to Big Bill Dawson when we had 28 black millionaires to one, to a point where black people was running around here calling themselves Hispanics. You founded this city And to make it, you had to claim Latino. Now I'm going to tell y'all what. We're going to get into the nitty gritty next week because we're going to talk about these organizations. We're going to talk about all of these outshoots that came from Mayor Daley. He created groups all over the city, but he created one group that went down in infamy. But it also, when they went down, it gave us a peek, some insight into what they were thinking. Think about the fact of a known gang member was in control of the contracting for a $20 million truck program. When does that happen for black people? Ever? And it's the same department that we're watching in the news right now. Black Chicago. There is a plot. Look, check this out. We can be cool with whoever we want to be cool with. You want to be cool with the Latinos? Be cool with the Latinos. Hispanic. But you got to ask what's in it for the black people. Period. Right? They will tell us all day about, look, y'all shouldn't be, y'all don't be, we black and brown, we together. I would challenge you, if you remove Harold Washington, to tell me a time in Chicago when the Latino community has had the back of black folks. As a matter of fact, when given the knife, they used it. Hence, Hispanic Democratic Organization. Now, y'all, when I tell you that these dudes was running around here like wild cowboys, I'm talking about wild cowboys. Federal indictments, all types, and guess what? They still operate in government. They still climbing the ladders. They changed the name, but they still there. Meanwhile, black folks, you still trying to figure out what's in it for you. What's in it for the black people? They gave, we are sanctuary. Where is the black sanctuary? Where is our peace? Now, I'm look, the reason that we did Poli Sci 101 is because we thought it was important that you understand the history of Chicago. I'm not bashing nobody. I don't got no ill will towards Latinos, Asians. I don't even got a problem with the green team. I have a problem with the fact that we ain't getting the green on our team. Right? I'm watching people build generational wealth while black people still are living worse than they did 20 years ago. So I hope that I was able to provide you some perspective. You know, sometimes, and I just want to touch on this one, and then I'm going to wrap this up, and we're going to go to our live Q&A with Queen Ruthie Latifah, who's got her Halloween costume on. Y'all, we didn't just get here overnight. It took years to make slaves slaves. It's going to take years to unprogram slaves from being slaves. And I mean that respectfully. So I tell you that you've got to understand that for years, all of us have been complicit. Not just the elected officials. Because I just got to say this. In all my years of doing politics, besides like the insiders, I never heard anybody who told me that they liked Mayor Daley. I just never really heard that. But yet and still, he whooped everybody. Yet and still, he whooped everybody. He won every black vote, every black ward, every black community, every time. So now, I just want to point this out. Before you talk about Uncle Tom's Coons, Uncle Toms, coons, sellouts, any of that stuff. What your grandmama do? What ward do you live in? Because I can almost guarantee you he won it. And even in the face, I'm going to take y'all ahead to now we ain't even got Mayor Daley. Rahm Emanuel won every black ward. And I just got to say one more thing. And in that, and I'm saying this because we got to start taking the emotions out of our politics. Y'all, the Latino community hasn't stood by us the same way that Rahm Emanuel hasn't stood by us. And I'm going to say that there was no difference between Chewy and Rahm to me. I voted for Willie Wilson. But in the second one, I voted for Rahm. Let me tell you why, though. Because I'm not politically emotional. Right now, that 4 years flew by, and we are coming up on a re-election, and guess what, black folks? You still don't know who you want to run against them. Right? But if you would have gave it to Chewy, we wouldn't even be talking about re-election. We wouldn't be talking about a candidate. We'd be talking about re-election. And I'm here to tell you that if we give up this mayor spot without getting it this next go round, black folks, you seen what they did from 89 to 96. What you think happens then? Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Maze Jackson. I want to thank you for attending this edition of Poli Sci 101, what black people need to know about politics in Illinois. Today's session was the Daley era, the dismantling of black political power. On behalf of the What's in It for the Black People Political Action Committee and Productions, for all of us, I want to thank you all for attending tonight. Don't miss our next two sessions. The next one will be next Tuesday, November 17th. We'll be broadcasting live from the soundstage. You don't want to miss that. The graphics are going to be off the chain. And then on Tuesday, November 14th, we'll have our final edition. We're going to talk about rebuilding the black infrastructure in Chicago. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Poli Sci 101. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Poli Sci 101, episode 2. I want to thank you for joining us. Stay tuned because we're going to go a live question and answer session with Ruthie Moore in just a few minutes. Thank you. Come on, let's get Ruthie here.
I'm still live.
We're going to stay live. Don't cut it off.
I just cut the audio off so they don't hear nothing.
Okay, we really though? Real talk? Okay, let's stop. We'll do that. Oh, good. We got intermission. Can they hear us still though?
No.
I was saying put his name.
Y'all wearing me out, man.
Okay.
Seriously. Hey, yo, like, check this out. Y'all gotta stop with all the action, the movement. I'm telling y'all.
You wasn't on Facebook at all for a minute.
Yeah.
I hear you.
So
we
were trying to.
I got you. So either somebody gotta say something, but it's like y'all doing it all right here.
It was smooth.
And
It was smooth. You kept it going because it didn't go up right away, and I had to get it back up. So
Yeah,
by the time,
see,
but it was smooth. You kept it going because YouTube got the whole
You
thing.
wasn't on.
It was smooth that you kept it going. It's smooth that you kept on going through the whole thing.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
Are we you ready?
Huh?
They said they can hear us.
They can hear us.
They said they can hear us.
That is, I forgot about YouTube.
Oh, we ain't getting no good views today. Everybody trick or treat.
Yes, they are.
Okay. This
I
side,
forgot
we'll see
about
what the replays are.
Are you ready? All right, we back live.
No, you're not.
It's a delay.
It's a delay on that.
Ba-ba-ba-ba.
So, Maze, do you want it to be real quiet? Because sometimes you say something and I want to say, yeah.
No, I don't have a problem. It's like, but it's the whole like.
We live on
y'all-
Facebook. We're live on Facebook.
Okay.
That's exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Poli Sci 101. What black people need to know about politics in Illinois. We are going to do our live Q&A session. I'm going to move this flag out of your way, Ruthie Moore, so we can get this on now. Ladies and gentlemen, Ruthie Moore. Ruthie, why did you do this? Ruthie, you are all dressed up and ready for Halloween?
You talking about this Halloween maze? I dress like this every day.
Ruthie, let me ask you a question. Who are you today?
Maze, I am hip hop before we got to all
You
this
conscious
shit.
hip hop?
Not it ain't all conscious Maze, but I am hip hop.
Okay, I'm gonna give you that, Ruthie. I'm gonna tell you, I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate your spirit. Ladies and gentlemen, Ruthie Moore, you know her from the WVON Morning Show. She comes on every Thursday. She is our social commentator, but today she's gonna be doing our Q&A. So let's do it.
All right, Maze. So we want to kick it off with an explanation. Now, this might be a little deep for you.
Deep.
But people want to know more about the role of the Uncle Tom in the black community. So since we got sold out, what role does the Uncle Tom play in the sellout?
So let me go backwards. I think the first thing is you need to understand who Uncle Tom was, because Uncle Tom was actually a hero. So the reason that when I said it was ironic that Eugene Sawyer was considered an Uncle Tom is because he was the mumbling, shuffling kind of guy, but he was like, he disarmed people and he was able to deliver stuff back. The role of the Uncle Tom now, let's not call, Ruthie, I'm loath to call someone an Uncle Tom because I think that everyone has a job and your job is to do it. I think the person that you are talking about is the person that the city has people assigned to black folks. And I think there are people that are assigned to black folks who who think their job is to keep everybody smiling as compared to telling the truth. So you'll see them come to your neighborhood, they'll come to the church, but they want to control the audience. They want to keep everybody quiet so that the mayor or whoever they're responsible for doesn't know that the mayor or whoever doesn't know that black folks are upset. So I think the role of the Uncle Tom right now, or the quote unquote Uncle Tom, is the person whose job is to communicate black issues, but then they don't ever do it.
Okay. So Maze, when you said the term black self-interest, it got a lot of people going on social media. And so can you speak more about what specifically are black people's self-interests?
I mean, black people's self-interest is anything that concerns black people, right? When you ask what's in it for the black people, that is our self-interest. In every project and everything that we do, what do black people get out of it? So when I analyze a situation, I check for my personal self-interest, which is, how is this going to affect me? But then the next step is for black folks is to say, how does this affect us? How does this impact us? And making your decisions based on the fact of how it will impact black folks.
Okay. So Daryl Stiff
Daryl!
from
What
Facebook,
up?
from Facebook, he wants to know, how do we fix this?
I think we're starting now. I think it starts with education, right? We have to raise the awareness. How many of you all have found the WVON Morning Show informative, or any of these Poli Sci sessions informative? Have you learned anything? Have you heard things about politics that you never knew? Right? So many people come up to me and say, dang, Maze, I didn't even know that. I had no clue of that. Yeah. So many times we are it's happening to us and we don't even know. So the first thing is making people aware. Then the second thing is identifying what are our desired outcomes. What is it that we want? You know, I asked the question on WVON in several times. What do black people want? They say, world freedom. I want the freedom to be treated like a black. That's not real. We need tangible. I want $10 million to be deposited in this bank to help this XYZ. But we don't necessarily. So there's no one self-interest.
Okay.
It's just multiple. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, that was Daryl's question. I went backwards. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. So in terms of rebuilding the black infrastructure. Al Norton from Facebook
What up, Alvin?
wants to know, where do we start with rebuilding the black infrastructure?
We start by not hating black folks when we see them. I mean, I think that we have got to learn that we are not our own biggest enemies. I think that's where it starts. I think that we need a think tank. I think we need a pack. And I think that we need organized people on the streets, and we need people who will inform them properly. I think right now most of the people that are being active out in the streets, etc., that have been misinformed. So we need to just make sure that we're on one accord and that we're sharing the right information.
Okay. So as we move to YouTube.
YouTube, what up?
All right. So the No PC show wants to know.
How come I ain't been on the No PC show? What's up with that? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
You want to answer that question, Maze? I'll skip it.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Didn't Daley just start implementing a lot of the plans that Harold Washington had earmarked for the South and West Sides?
Some. Not just, no. I wouldn't say that, because I don't think anybody knew he was having a black president. I don't think that they knew there was an Obama library coming. But I will tell you that there was the Plan Commission does have a 30-year plan, right? And so a lot of the stuff is laid out. But no, I don't think that the level of gentrification, I don't think there was a Millennium Park. I don't think there was a closing of Meigs Field. I don't think there was a lot of things that were in that plan. And I definitely don't think that Harold Washington wanted to make sure that black people got less than 3% of the contracts. So no, I don't think he was implementing that same plan.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So somebody wants to talk about Theo Wilson from Facebook.
Theo!
He commented that shared black community interests exist. What do you say to people who say to you, Maze, that black people are not a monolith?
See how that's working out? Right? So you don't hear anybody else walking around talking. Why do we diffuse our power? Right? We may not all vote the same way, but why do we gotta go tell everybody, I ain't that nigga. I'm not like him. Cause we so busy chasing, trying to be acceptable. Again, it is a mindset, right? It is a mindset that has been programmed into us. You don't hear nobody else. Do you hear Jewish people walking about, we don't think together? No, because you know what they want? They want their collective strength. Now, we all know that everybody ain't going to think or do the same thing. But at the same time, we don't need to go around saying, hey, pick me off. Because oftentimes when the person that says we ain't a monolith is like, they usually the one that's saying, I want to be the special Negro.
Yep.
Okay. So in terms of keeping that going,
Special Negroes out there.
so Al also wants to know that we don't know our value. So how do we get black people to understand our value? Because the argument is that before we can take political action, we still slaves. How do we wake the masses up, Mace?
I think that black folks need an action to take an action that wakes and shakes white folks up. And then black folks will see their value. Let me just explain it to you. Like, imagine if every black person decided that they were going to, just hear me out, we're going to vote for Erica Harold for Attorney General. Right? That is a black woman who is a Republican. So we could vote for a black woman and send the party a very strong message. Now, what do you think happens the next election? See, right now they count on the fact that you ain't gonna do nothing. So if they know you ain't gonna do nothing, they ain't gotta do nothing. Give them an action, and I bet they'll respond.
Okay.
I'm not suggesting that's my plan. I'm suggesting that there's an example.
Yeah.
Okay. So our next question comes from Rodolfo Jesus.
Rudy! What up, Rudy? Now, Rudy and I, just so y'all know, Rudy and I took the MLI class when we were in UNO together. What up, Rudy? And Rudy is a really good dude. What's up, man?
All right, so he wants to know, who are some of the black political candidates that we should be supporting in 2019?
In 2019, shoot, the candidates for 2019, we don't even know yet, Rudy. So I don't know, but we want to look at the field. That is part of the reason that we're going to do the What's in It for the Black People Voters Guide, right? So we're gonna be analyzing and studying. So many times, Rudy, they tell us we already made a decision without hearing anything. So we're gonna look at the Democratic slate and just say, oh, these are the candidates we're gonna vote for. No, we want to talk to them. We want to hear them. We want them to give us an answer to what's in it for the black people. Did you hear Chris Kennedy today on the show? Right? So somebody would try to tell me that Chris Kennedy was a great candidate, right? Till we heard him talk. And then we heard him talk, and then we found out that he didn't believe that if you have a private project in the city of Chicago, that blacks should participate. So guess what? I used to like John F. Kennedy. I was like, man, the Kennedy, that's a great name. So I heard that bull. We gotta listen. It's like we have already made a decision, or not. We've already made a decision. They send you your decisions in the mail. They call it the what do they call it? The palm card, the Democratic mailing palm card, basically. But they've already selected the candidates for you and told you who's best for you. We need to time that out, and we need to send back a list that says, no, these are the best candidates for us. Now these are the ones we identified. If you ain't made our list, you got a problem, white boy. Go ahead.
Okay, so now Maze, this might get a little controversial, so just give me the wink.
Controversy. Controversy.
All right.
Controversy. What?
Kenya from Facebook said Daley was the mob.
Oh.
You could face serious consequences for going against Daley. So Maze, how do black people harness their political power in the face of the mob?
Okay, so first of all, respectfully, I don't want to have. I'm already worried about starting my car. But I'm also say this, right? I don't know. I don't know anybody that's a better fighter than black people. Now, one of the things that you heard me talk about earlier was the fact that we needed to reconnect all of the dots. Business, politics, I call it grassroots, streets, religion, education. You see, and we're the only people that were not able to translate our illicit profits into wealth and transform them into legitimacy. So while we got folks and vice lords in our family, right? They got Hamburg Club and such organization and fellowship, this and that. Ours has been never had the opportunity to move from criminal to legitimate. And because we haven't, I would just say that if we were connected, if our whole community was connected, I wouldn't worry about that. But until our community is connected, you're right. There is a price to pay.
Okay, so Maze, you speak a lot about businesses and how the black businesses got here in Washington elected. When we look in our communities, we see people who own businesses that don't look like us. How can we begin to take back the businesses in our communities?
Don't buy a Porsche. Oh, sorry. I'm shame. You know I got that one. But look, I think that being an entrepreneur is not, you have to have a very underdeveloped sense of fear. And so we've got some great entrepreneurs in our community. We've got to redirect that entrepreneurial spirit from the corner to the corner store. So the same guy that is standing outside that corner store, if properly directed, could run that corner store, right? He knows inventory, he knows product, he knows supply and demand, he knows pricing, he knows everything he needs. Just got to have a practical application to it, guys. Right? We got to do a practical application to it. So I think that we can go back to, I think it starts with people that have identified themselves saying they want to be entrepreneurs, putting some seed money together, or having having a fund like we see from the Koreans to Asians, everybody else, that we can self-fund our own businesses and then put it back.
Okay. So, Mace, I was going to save this for the end, but I've seen this question 3 times. Are you talking about running for mayor?
So I'll say it again. That deep in the deepest recesses of my heart, and probably if you were to ask my mom in 1975 or 6, they said I was going to be the mayor of Chicago, right? But I will tell you that, and as much as I would love the opportunity, I still have not wrapped my mind around the fact that it could even be possible for a person like me. I'm just telling you now, I'm still overwhelmed by the radio show. And so, is it something that I would consider? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. But have I gotten to the place where I believe that it's possible for me, Maze Jackson? Not yet. I got some mental things in my own mind. Maybe it's been some training that I still haven't shook, and even as I'm doing this, I hear things in my head that have been programmed deep into me about what I can and can't do, what's possible, what's not possible. So would I entertain a run for mayor? Yes, I would. But am I there yet? No. I don't necessarily believe that the city of Chicago would pick a guy like me. So, I'm always fearful of being rejected. Always. So, who knows, man. That's why I probably didn't get a date till I couldn't ask nobody out until I was like a sophomore, because I was like, she gonna say no! And I sure would hate for y'all to, because I really couldn't imagine Mayor Emanuel hitting me up with the wrong father if I didn't win. right? He'd be like, we're gonna take Maze's view.
Okay, so Maze, our next question is, can you describe black folks outside of skin color? And that comes from Keith Harris from Facebook.
Damn, Keith. See, Keith, why, man? Come on, man. We just want the Ogden Park Eagles to win the championship. Can we just keep it simple, man? Describe black folks. I think that there's no one description of black people, right? So here I just said that we're not monolithic, but there is no one description of black people. I think the simplest way that we can describe it is that we've encapsulated as direct descendants of chattel slavery. Now we know in Chicago and the world, one drop of blood you in, but I think there are some unique common experiences that we as blacks who have grown up here, who have gone through that whole process, share. And so some of those commonalities are, just living through white skin privilege. I grew up in Bolingbrook, so I got different experiences, but then I have so many common experiences. And the one thing that I think is common is that we all are victims of white skin privilege.
Okay.
Let that be right there.
So Darius Randall.
Darius Deontay, the good Reverend Doctor. Good Reverend Doctor. God gonna bless you real good. Darius Deontay, what's up, brother?
He wants to know, Maze, in finding a black candidate to run against Rahm, does he have to be just like Harold Washington?
No. I think that we need to... Black folks are fixated on Harold Washington, and until we can let Harold Washington go in Chicago, not from the standpoint of not honoring his memory, but stop talking about what we gonna do. When Harold was here, I had did. You know how many 70-year-old people are still talking about what they did when Harold was here? Harold was the old model. There's lessons that we can learn from them as far as organizing. But guys, we gotta move past Harold Washington, because guess what? They moved past him the day he passed, and we still looking backwards. Like, is he coming back? He ain't Jesus, y'all. He not coming back. And so if he ain't coming back, what's next? Right? And we missed out on the Barack piece. That wasn't us.
Damn.
That wasn't us.
Okay, So our next question also comes from Facebook. Michelle Flagg.
What up, Michelle Flagg?
She wants to know.
What you want to know?
You know, it's a good one too.
She about to be like, did
Yes.
you support the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce?
Oh, we close, but not quite. It is. Will any black women be highlighted in Poli Sci? Examples: Dorothy Tillman, Carol Mosley Braun, etc.
I would say I'm glad that you brought that up, and I will mention it. I mean, I think Carol Mosley Braun was historic. I think Dorothy Tillman plays a role in the history, and we can probably figure that out. And so, thank you, Michelle. I will incorporate them into the next one, and I will also go above and beyond to look for women, so that y'all don't be talking about some Me Too on me. I'm just playing. Respect.
Okay, so the conversation has shifted a little bit to people are inquiring about why Black Lives Matter activists aren't running for office.
Because do you want my real answer?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a couple answers. The first answer is because the power structure that is empowering them does not want them to take that radical brand of that radical philosophy to
Politics.
Washington or to the State House. They needed to stay in the streets. Okay. The second thing is that I think that most of our Black Lives Matter activists and these new political activists are really created by Facebook. They don't necessarily have true political acumen. And not to say that they don't have the capability, but have they ever knocked on a door? Do they know what Vote Builder is? Have they ever had to count? Do they know what plus minus zero is? How do you win an election? Right? You can't win an election just with social media. And so what happens is that people have conflated the number of likes that they get or the number of views that they get with the work that it takes to become an elected official. And so when you recognize that you have to knock on doors from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock every night, and it ain't all sexy and it ain't all campaign commercials, you know what? You get more props just screaming at the people than actually doing the work. That's the reason that I would ask you, I always say, look at outcomes. We got all these professional activists that cannot give you any outcomes, right? They can show you every march, but what happens after the march? And then the other thing is when you ask no diss to Black Lives Matter, but my question for everybody is who finances you? Where does your money come from? If you can't tell me where your money, so if you are residential staff or faculty at University of Chicago claiming Black Lives Matter, I got a question. That don't jive, right? Because we know I ain't got beef with University of Chicago. I ain't got beef with Black Lives Matter. But I know University of Chicago ain't got no big, great history of helping black folks. And if they put you on the payroll and brought you here, what they bring you here for? To fight against them? Hell no. So again, and I also want to encourage you all to recognize that a lot of the people in the category that you're talking about are creations. They are creations for white folks to encapsulate the rage and leverage it. That's why now after they threw with Black Lives Matter, you see Trump coming back talk about he gonna declare them all. Where's the people standing up screaming, yelling? Where's George Soros? Where's all them people pushing back? Because it's ready for them. Bye. Them and young black kids, they're expendable. They are expendable. And they go get young black kids whose parents and who are disinvolved or who are challenged, get their mind off, and then say, them people like Mays is against you. No, young brother and young sister, I want you to come on home. I want you to understand that them people that's telling you that your brother is against you because of your confusion or your choices that you're making. That's why I say what's in it for the black people. I don't care if you black and gay, you black and Chinese, if you black, we are for you, right? As long as you for us.
Okay. So next, our next question comes from Roberto from Facebook,
Roberto Sepulveda, it's my new.
and it's about political strategy.
Yo,
Should the black community support a weak governor/mayor model so that legislators/aldermen can have more influence to bring back the bag to their communities?
that sounds good. That sounds good, but no. Yeah, I mean, I think that we supposed to have a strong mayor. I mean, a weak mayor, strong council. The fact of the matter is, if you control the jobs and contracts, you will be back in power. So, I think that. But Roberto, that is the premise that you're talking about. That I said with Mayor Emanuel and Chewy, right? Emanuel was a weakened mayor. We knew that in 4 years he would be super weak and we could take him down. As compared to elevating Chewy and getting 8 years, so you get 4 years, I said that was the exact same strategy that I employed. But until we get unemotional, until we don't get not mad about the short term and not the long term, we'll be victims. We'll continue to be, as Malcolm called us, political chumps. You got one more question.
All right. Our last question, Maze, and it's a good one. It's from Kenya Price.
Kenya Price. Kenya must be new. Go ahead.
But she's making some good comments.
Come on, what's up, Kenya?
So she said, black folks have to start sharing positive monetary information. Stop keeping the goods for ourselves. How do we get black people in a place to do this?
Let me tell you, one of the best things white folks have done is keep money out of the black community. So the first time, as soon as you get something, then they got a whole crowd of black folks talk about, you done sold out, you got some money, we gotta reset. There's got to be, black folks have got to lose their fear of money. We got to start generating some. And see, once everybody got some, then you ain't so worried about everybody. It's such a scarcity of money in our community right now. So that means, how, yeah, them black folks invent frying chicken and fish. Then we invent that. So then why in the hell does JJ, Felipe, and Juan got chicken, corn, and fish in our neighborhoods, and you talking about why black folks won't share the monetary wealth? I think the question we need to be asking is to the Arabs and to all these other people that's opening up, what's up with that bag in our community? I believe we should form some benevolent association. And you know what? You know how we need a school? You know how that school down there? You got it. You're going to have to hit the pay. You know what, y'all. See? You don't get me in trouble. And Audrey is telling me that I have 1 minute left. Dang, that was a good one. I think we should form some benevolent associations, so y'all, to start. And I think that anybody that's operating and taking bags up out of our community needs to be bringing some bags back, and not the ones from Walmart.
Yeah.
So, let's black folks. How about this? How about we don't spend so much time on how much money black folks are getting? Let's spend some time on how much money everybody else is getting from black folks. If we could do that, then I think that would be an answer to your question. Ladies and gentlemen, now you all know, I say this on my WVON morning show, there's nothing I enjoy more than being with my family. And you all are my extended family. This series is a personal mission of my own that I am so grateful to have met this wonderful group of people who have banded together to create what we now call the What's in It for the Black People PAC. For a long time, thought that maybe I was crazy. Maybe I was the only one that was wondering, thinking, or whatever. But as I continue to go out, as as I continue, as these brothers and sisters that are here continue to show up, I know that we're not out here alone. There's a lot of us that are thinking the same thing. What's in it for the black people? I'm going to just go back to 1989 when Harold Washington died. I don't know if there's been an answer since. So I'm asking you, do you care about what's going on in the black community? Are you a black person? Do you want to know what's in it for the black people? I want to encourage you to join us, right? We meet every first Tuesday of the month. Right here, we'll put the information in the feed as well as we'll post it. But if you are interested in what's in it for the black people, are you interested in what's in it for the black people for your community? Not just the city of Chicago, whether you're in Harvey, Markham, Bolingbrook, and you got a group of people and y'all want to know what's in it for the black people. Let's connect the dots, y'all. I'll say this and then I'm a wrap. The last two gubernatorial elections came down to less than 5,000 votes. There's more than 5,000 black folks who want to know the answer to what's in it for the black people. I got word today that the billionaires, the biggest thing they fear in this election is these letters. What's in it for the black people? And I ain't talking about one billionaire. I'm talking about, it's a list of billionaires here in Chicago. They all wondering about what is this gonna do to this next coming election. So I'm asking you to join with us. Join the What's in It for the Black People Political Action Committee. White folks be making fun of us all over. Wow, what they think they're gonna do? But we're gonna change this world. We're gonna change this political dynamic. And we're not gonna let people just keep coming to our neighborhoods taking selfies, and then taking off. Take a selfie and take off. No. You can't answer what's in it for the black people. I'm telling you, it's a movement that is happening. It's not just, I ain't crazy, y'all. We ain't crazy. It's happening. And so all y'all that's watching, you know who I'm talking to, right? You running around calling your guy right now saying, what we gonna do about the black community? Hey man, does that button work over by them people? Alright, you gonna go find you some Negroes and they gonna come tell you, I got the black community. They gonna march you up to a committeeman's office. They gonna march you in front of a big old crowd of people eating chicken and watermelon. That ain't who we are. Ain't no smiles. Ain't no selfies. Till you answer the question, what's in it for the black people? Ladies and gentlemen, I've been your host tonight, Maze Jackson. For the whole What's in It for the Black People family. And there's so many of them, at this point I can't even name them all. But I'm going to tell you that this is not a one-man band. This is not a one-person show. This would not have been done without the cooperation of everybody in our organization. And I'm about to tell y'all, we'll be coming to a community near you. So for all of us, I just want to say thank you for tuning in to Poli Sci 101, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. Hey, wait, sign up for the newsletter. Check us out every morning, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. I'm your host, Maze Jackson. Got my boy Charles Thomas. He'll be there too. We're going to keep on asking the questions. And until next week, we out of here. And if they don't like it, you can tell them, Maze.